Hi guys, Glader here. So today I have a video about emulation. I'm going to be using FreecraftCore's World of Warcraft emulation to talk about this topic. And the topic is how to approach emulation at the networking level and what's the best approach when the specification exists. For instance, World of Warcraft's packet specification is loosely defined by various projects such as Mangos and Trinity Core. And how do we approach generating a completely separate emulation project based on that implied specification? So, one approach that I've recently taken, thanks to the work that I created developing the Proxy that allowed you to connect to multiple versions of the game from one client, I was able to create a packet capture system that captured individual packets and saved them to binary files. And from those files, I actually now have 12,000 test cases that check to see if the DTO model, which is basically your class, in this case, is the appropriate, can handle the varying lengths of the various packets, the various flags that are sometimes set on the packets, and if the general structure is correct. So this is just step one of two steps of what I think is the best approach for emulating network applications. So you can see there's thousands of test cases, and these test against all the various models or DTOs or whatever you want to call them that are defined in the project that you can actually find yourself under packets, and you can see the various packet implementations. And if any of these were to fail, which it was earlier, if you could check my commit history, it wasn't handling some of the data that S-message auth response was sending. Even though it doesn't have to, it noticed that it didn't match the actual test cases that were generated from the packet captures. And so this is step one of what I think is the best approach of creating all the packet DTOs. And that's incredibly important because it is the language in which the client server communicate with. And if you can't speak the language, can't emulate, you can't communicate. So there is a step that I think people should take next, further than this, and that I haven't taken yet myself. But that's once you have these test cases, this test lengths, and whether or not you generally have a model that could deserialize with the given bytes to some sort of representation, but it doesn't mean the representation is correct. So for example, if you take this very simple packet, let's find a different packet other than this, something that people can relate to. Maybe, alright, item, C-message item query. So if you encounter an item, and you know the ID in GUID, you can send a request to get information about it. Some of that information is server-side, so that's why you actually do that. And we can see that there's just two fields here. There's a 64-bit GUID in older versions of WoW, and a 32-bit query ID. And that's the item ID. So you can see that we have a model here. But just because it's the same length, the same binary length, and we can deserialize the binary test case to this model, doesn't mean the model's correct. The next step would be to create test cases with known values. Create a query or make a query happen in the client and capture the packet where you know the query item ID, where you know the object GUID, and then use that as a test case to check whether or not the deserialized DTO is in fact representing the packet as it should be. So while this is a monumental step forward for emulation in various projects such as World of Warcraft and PhantasyStarOnline for me personally, in terms of FreecraftCore, it does need to go one step further to be perfect. It's not perfect yet, but this is an important first step to at least know that your DTOs that represent the packets are actually the correct size and can deserialize or serialize the packets properly. Otherwise, you don't really know, and when you go into testing, you'll get some failures and could introduce regressions in some way, and this prevents against regressions. So I highly recommend that, and I'm very happy that the project has this now. Another thing that you could do is make sure that once you've deserialized it, you can reserialize to the correct binary representation. They should be equal. That's something I don't know if I do. Can deserialize to DTO, same as binary representation. Ah, you can see the test case. I actually do that. It's been a long time since I opened the project. I wasn't sure. But yeah, that's the video for today, guys. A very technical video. I should have warned you guys in the beginning, but hope you guys enjoyed it, and I'll see you in the next one.